The Curse of Silver Lake. Serialized horror retelling. Chapter 1. Whispers on the Water. The Silver Lake lay like a wound in the wilderness, its surface a black mirror reflecting nothing but the swollen, pale moon above. The wind had died as if the very air feared to disturb it, and the reeds along the banks were still, their tips brushing together with a sound almost like whispering. Trees leaned inward, twisted and gnarled, their bark scarred by age and wind, as though they were eavesdropping on the lake's secrets. The earth smelled of damp decay and something else, metallic and bitter, a scent that set teeth on edge. A rider appeared on the far shore, a solitary figure framed against the black water. His horse stumbled in the mud, dragging its hooves as if the ground itself sought to hold it back. The man clutched the reins with white-knuckled hands, gripping the saddle as though his life depended on it, because it did. On his back, a pack bulged with silver coins and ingots, treasure lost and whispered about for decades, the lure that had claimed countless men before him. He dismounted with a grunt, boots sinking into the mud, and pressed a hand to the horse's flank to calm it. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, yet he stayed, driven by greed and the thrill of the unknown. Beneath the still surface of the lake, the treasure waited. Legends spoke of Spanish coins, gold bullion, and relics older than memory, but always with a warning. Those who sought the lake's silver often found only death. The rider knelt beside his pack, fingers trembling as he began to sort the coins. His ears caught a soft sound first, almost imperceptible, like silk brushing against stone. He froze. The wind had ceased completely. Even the horse stood unnaturally still, nostrils flaring. The sound grew, a sibilant, curling whisper that seemed to originate from the water itself. It was not a voice in any language he knew, yet it seemed to speak directly to his mind, calling, tempting, beckoning. He forced himself to breathe and focus. "It's the wind," he whispered aloud, more to convince himself than to deny it. Yet the whisper persisted, coiling around him like smoke, and the mud at his knees began to tremble. Coins slipped from his fingers, spilling into the mud, and as he reached for them, a black tendril of water slid silently around his ankle. He recoiled, but more tendrils emerged, curling like snakes, reaching for the pack, for his hands, for him. His heart hammered, and he drew his revolver, firing wildly. The gunshot echoed across the valley but did nothing. The water rose, creeping over his boots, cold as death, tugging at him with unrelenting strength. Panic surged through him. "Help!" he screamed, though no one would hear. The lake's surface rippled unnaturally, and more coils emerged, slick and black, grasping at him. He kicked and pulled, but it was useless. The whispering grew louder, a chorus of voices, some mocking, some pleading, none human. Every coin he touched seemed to slip further from his grasp, vanishing into the water's depths. Minutes or hours passed, and his strength waned. The moon climbed and fell in the sky. The water seemed to breathe with him, rising and falling, patient and inexorable. The horse reared, neighing in terror, and bolted, leaving him alone, anchored to the lake by the black coils. A final, desperate struggle, hands clawing at mud and coins alike, ended abruptly. He was dragged under, the whisper swallowing him whole. By dawn, the lake lay calm again. Mist hugged the trees and rippled across the water's surface. A scattering of coins remained, glinting faintly in the early light, like eyes watching for the next greedy soul. Somewhere on the wind, a whisper rose again, soft and insistent, carrying a promise of wealth and a warning of death. The Silver Lake had claimed another life, and it would claim many more. The plains remained silent, yet alive. Deer and wolves moved cautiously along the edges, as if aware of the curse that now hung heavier than the morning mist. Every stalk of grass, every twisted root, seemed to lean toward the lake, bearing witness to the horror beneath. As the day brightened, the memory of the rider lingered. His screams had long since faded, yet in the mind of any who dared to come near, the lake's promise would echo. The water's surface was perfect and unbroken, black as pitch, yet beneath it moved coils and shadows, hungry for men foolish enough to approach. Hours passed. Birds cautiously returned to the trees, their calls hesitant, unsure. The wind stirred once more, rustling the reeds, whispering in tongues older than any living man. A fox darted along the bank, eyes gleaming as though it had seen and survived. The lake remained patient, eternal, waiting. Even the sun's ascent could not warm the lake. Silver glinted faintly beneath the surface, tempting, promising, and deceiving. Any who sought it would face its wrath, and none would leave unchanged. The water seemed to pulse with anticipation, alive and aware, counting the hours until another man came. Night fell again, and the darkness thickened, the moon rising to witness new shadows. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. The sound was answered, not by another wolf, but by the lake itself, a low, gurgling sound, as if it acknowledged the hunger in the world, in men's hearts, and waited to fill it. The story of the Silver Lake, whispered in nearby towns, carried only part of the truth. Greed, terror, and supernatural malevolence were intertwined, waiting for the next fool bold enough to cross the water's edge. The Silver Lake, patient and eternal, had claimed its latest victim, and beneath its glassy black surface, the silver waited, glimmering and cursed. Chapter 2: The Outlaw's Pact. Dry Creek was a town on the edge of nowhere, its wooden buildings weathered and leaning as if weighed down by decades of wind and dust. The streets were empty, dust swirling in lazy eddies across the boards. The wind carried the scent of scorched earth and faint smoke from distant fires. Only the saloon seemed alive, its swinging doors creaking and groaning with every gust, as if sighing under the weight of secrets it had witnessed for decades. Inside, the smell of stale whiskey and tobacco hung thick in the air. A lone oil lamp flickered on a scarred table where 5 men huddled over a yellowed map, their faces shadowed and grim. Jedediah Krantz, broad-shouldered and scarred across his left cheek, tapped the map impatiently, his eyes flicking over a marked X near the edge of Silver Lake. "You've heard the stories," he said, voice low, steady, yet carrying a hard edge. "Gold, silver, relics lost to time, buried treasure waiting to be claimed. I intend to get it before anyone else even knows it's there." Elias Boone, a once priest-turned-disillusioned man of drink, leaned forward. His hands shook slightly as he poured whiskey into a chipped glass. "I've heard those stories," he murmured, voice hushed. "The lake, it doesn't give freely. Some say it swallows men whole. Curses, spirits, shadows in the water that aren't water at all. Unnatural things." Krantz snorted, dragging a finger over the map. "Unnatural or not, the reward is real. Those who hesitate get nothing. We're men of action, and I don't intend to leave empty-handed." Luke Marrow, wiry and missing several teeth, chuckled, the sound thin and sharp. "Fortune favors the bold, they say, and if it doesn't, well, better someone else's luck than ours. I've no fancy for ghosts or whispers, only silver in my palm." Silas Crow, half Comanche, half outlaw, leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed, watching the others. His voice was quiet but deliberate when he spoke. "Gold comes at a price. Some debts, some deals. You cannot walk away from alive. The lake doesn't forgive mistakes, men. Don't fool yourselves." McGraw, hulking and imposing, slammed his hand on the table. Price or no, I'll take it. Silver is silver. Gold is gold. Devil, demon, or lake spirit, I'll deal with it later. First, we take what's ours. Krantz smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Good. That's the spirit I want to see. We ride at first light, powder, steel, and nerves of iron. Once we've claimed the treasure, we split 5 ways, fair and square. The barkeep, a white-haired man with more years than sense, spat into a rag and muttered, "You boys talk like it's just another hole in the ground. That lake, it takes more than it gives. Mark my words." Krantz laughed, short and sharp, almost cruel. "Old man, your warnings mean nothing. I'll judge the danger myself. I've survived more than the likes of you could imagine." Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the dry wooden shingles and tossing dust into spiraling columns across the empty streets. A lone coyote howled in the distance, but the sound was strangled and abruptly cut off, leaving a silence heavier than before. The 5 men exchanged glances. None spoke, yet each felt the same unease coil in their stomachs. The town itself seemed to whisper caution, a warning carried on the dry, restless wind. Hours passed, and the night deepened. The men drank in silence, each lost in thought. Boone's eyes kept darting to the darkened corners of the room, half expecting shadows to move. Marrow tapped his fingers nervously on the table, glancing at the map as if it might shift under his gaze. Silas Crow's hand rested lightly on his knife, a subtle reminder that not all threats would come from the lake. Krantz finally stood, slamming his fist on the table. The map jumped, dust spilling from the folds. "Enough talk. At dawn, we ride. Each of you knows the plan. Stick to it, and we all come back rich. Fail and, well, let's hope none of us do." The others nodded, some reluctantly, some with barely concealed eagerness. Fear and greed danced in equal measure in their hearts. The lake was dangerous, yes, but the promise of silver gleamed brighter than any shadow of dread. By dawn, the town was still. Horses were saddled and ready, shadows moving silently across the dusty streets. Each man mounted in silence, the wind whistling between buildings like a warning, carrying with it the soft, distant whisper of Silver Lake. No bird sang, no dog barked, only the sound of leather creaking, hooves striking dry boards, and the faint rustle of the wind as it moved eastward toward the cursed waters. As they rode, the landscape grew harsher, more desolate. Trees became sparse and twisted, scrub and rock replacing fertile soil. The air smelled damp and metallic as the lake drew near, and an almost imperceptible tension clung to the men. Shadows seemed to cling unnaturally, shifting with intent. Marrow spat on the ground. "I don't like this," he muttered. "Too quiet. Too wrong." Boone's hands clenched the reins, knuckles white. "I told you," he whispered, voice trembling. "It's not natural. It's not meant to be taken." Krantz's jaw tightened, and he didn't answer. Greed and impatience filled his chest, pushing fear aside. But even he couldn't shake the creeping sense that the lake watched them, waiting, calculating, aware of every heartbeat and every thought. By mid-morning, they crested a small ridge, and the Silver Lake came into view. It was larger than any of them expected, dark as tar, reflecting the sky like a mirror gone wrong. Mist hovered above the surface, curling in thick, lazy tendrils. Even from a distance, the lake seemed alive, breathing, pulsing with a silent rhythm that unnerved every man who looked upon it. The riders slowed, instinctively, each feeling the weight of the place pressing down upon them. The whispers began then, soft, almost imperceptible at first, curling around the edges of their minds. None spoke of it, but each heard the faint hissing, the subtle curling cadence, the almost musical warning that the lake extended to all who approached. Marrow swallowed hard, voice barely audible. I think it's talking to us. Silas Crow grunted, unsheathing his knife briefly. Doesn't matter what it says. It doesn't forgive. It doesn't bargain. It takes. And one of us will find out soon enough if we're fools. The sun climbed higher, yet the mist never lifted. Hooves sank into the soft ground of the shore as the men dismounted, stepping carefully toward the lake. Every sound, breath, creaking leather, distant crows seemed magnified, as if the lake was listening. Coins jingled faintly in their packs, a reminder of why they came, and a warning of what awaited beneath the black, glimmering surface. They moved closer, each step heavier than the last. Greed pressed their shoulders forward, fear whispered in their ears, and the lake waited, patient, eternal, hungering for the next soul bold enough to trespass. Chapter 3. Shadows on the Shore. The outlaws advanced slowly, the air heavy with mist and the scent of damp earth. Each step brought a faint squelch of mud, clinging to boots and dragging their movements down, as if the land itself wished to hold them back. The forest thinned near the lake, the gnarled trees twisting unnaturally, their shadows stretching towards the men like skeletal fingers warning them to turn back. Boone's pulse thudded in his ears. It's quiet. Too quiet, he whispered. The others exchanged uneasy glances. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, leaving an unnatural stillness that pressed against their ears and hearts. From the edge of the mist, faint whispers rose, soft, curling, almost melodic. Boone felt them inside his head, not carried on the air. "Do you hear that?" he asked, voice trembling. Marrow laughed nervously. "Huh? It's the wind, nothing more, unless the wind talks back now." Krantz didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the black waters ahead. The lake shimmered faintly in the morning mist, like oil on water, almost liquid shadow. Every ripple seemed deliberate, as though something beneath watched their approach, calculating, waiting. The group reached the shoreline. The black water lapped silently, tendrils of fog curling over the muddy banks. Boone swallowed hard as a chill ran through him. Shadows moved just at the edge of his vision, coalescing and dissipating without rhyme or reason. Marrow shivered. "It's alive," he whispered. Krantz motioned to the map. "The treasure lies beyond that ridge. We'll split into 2 teams and search the perimeter. Stay alert. Every step matters." The teams separated, each footfall amplified in the eerie stillness. Boone stumbled on a root, and the sound echoed across the lake. The whispers grew, curling around his mind like smoke. He felt a cold brush on the back of his neck. When he turned, nothing was there. Suddenly, a scream pierced the fog. Marrow yelped as a black tendril shot from the lake, wrapping around his ankle. He struggled violently, but the lake's grasp was relentless. Boone and Silas pulled him free, but the black water recoiled like a predator, waiting for the next opportunity. The realization struck them. The lake was no ordinary water. It was alive, intelligent, and malevolent. Hours passed. Tension grew unbearable. Every man was alert, senses stretched taut. The mist thickened, swallowing outlines and muting sounds. The lake's surface shimmered faintly, mocking them. Coins in their packs clinked lightly with each step, yet the sound seemed too loud, echoing unnaturally, as if amplified by unseen ears. At last, they reached a small cove, partially hidden by driftwood and jagged rocks. The treasure lay somewhere beneath the lake's obsidian surface. The men dismounted, hearts pounding, aware that every movement was watched. Boone hesitated. He felt the whispers press against his mind, teasing, promising. The group paused, realizing the lake had drawn them fully into its domain. Shadows shimmered beneath the water, coiling and uncoiling like serpents. Krantz's voice cut through the tension. "Careful. Dig where I tell you. Nothing else matters." They began to dig, mud clinging to hands and boots. The mist swirled around them like smoke, and the whispers grew louder. Boone saw shadows moving beneath the water's surface, humanoid and grotesque. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the lure of silver and gold anchored them in place. Hours passed. The earth yielded a chest, old and covered in mud, faint silver glinting through the grime. They paused, catching their breaths, unaware that the lake itself watched, waiting for the first touch of greed. Chapter 4. Murmurs in the mist. The cove seemed frozen in time. Mist clung to the edges of the black water like a living shroud, curling over driftwood and jagged rocks, obscuring the lake's depths. The air was thick, cold, and damp, carrying a faint metallic tang that made Boone's stomach churn. Each man's breathing sounded unnaturally loud in the silence, a drumbeat of anxiety that the mist seemed to absorb and twist. Boone crouched beside the partially unearthed chest, brushing mud from the silver coins that peeked from its seams. Every coin seemed to vibrate beneath his fingers, a cold energy that made his teeth chatter. "It's alive," he whispered under his breath. The words barely left his lips before a ripple ran through the lake, spreading like dark veins across the water's surface. The mist swirled, coiling around the men like snakes, and faint voices rose in unison, whispering in a language he did not know but understood all the same. A promise and a threat wrapped in the same syllables. Marrow backed away from the chest, eyes wide, hand clutching his revolver. "It's speaking to us. I hear it calling my name." His voice cracked with fear, a tremor that Boone felt deep in his own chest. The whispers grew louder, twisting their thoughts. Boone realized that each man was hearing something different. Memories, fears, desires, all exposed and amplified. Krantz, ever the leader, crouched beside the chest, ignoring the sounds. "Focus! We came for this. Take only what you can carry. Don't let it distract you." But even he flinched as the mist thickened, curling into shapes that suggested human forms, moving just beyond perception. Shadows slithered across the chest as though inspecting it, testing their courage. Silas Crow remained near the water's edge, knife in hand, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. "It's not just the mist, it's the lake itself," he muttered. "It knows we're here. It wants us to touch the silver, to take it. And then—" His voice dropped, swallowed by the wind. Boone understood. Once it claimed attention, there was no turning back. Marrow, shaking, reached toward a silver coin, drawn as if by an invisible magnet. Boone grabbed his wrist, yanking him back. "Don't! Don't you see? It's a trap." The lake responded immediately. Dark tendrils surged from beneath the surface, striking the shore in arcs of black water. The force slammed into the men, throwing them backward, mud flying. Marrow screamed, scrambling to his knees, and the shadows swirled with him, curling around his limbs. Boone lunged to drag him free, but the tendrils recoiled just enough to let him escape, then sank back beneath the surface, leaving ripples in their wake. The whispers grew louder, no longer indecipherable. "Take it all, or die." Boone felt the words lodge in his chest, vibrating with the same rhythm as his heartbeat. He realized the lake was feeding on their greed and fear, amplifying every impulse toward madness. Hours passed in a tense silence, punctuated by sudden, violent movements in the water. Every time a man reached toward the coins, Shadows rose, writhing and snapping, testing their resolve. Boone noticed how each man's movements were hesitant, fearful, as if the lake could see their thoughts, judge their worthiness. He shivered, realizing that the treasure itself had become a living thing, a test, a predator. Krantz slammed his hand onto the chest, drawing their attention. Enough hesitation. We've come this far. We take it together. Keep your wits, and don't let it scare you off. They began carefully lifting the chest, struggling with its weight. The mist thickened again, muffling sound and sight. Shapes seemed to form and dissolve around them, faces of drowned men, twisted and frozen in expressions of terror, peering from the fog. Boone's stomach turned. He could see the skeletal outlines of figures in the water beneath, not fully human, writhing and reaching. He recoiled, but the chest beckoned as if urging him forward. A sudden scream split the air. Marrow stumbled back, falling into the mud. Boone turned, horror-struck, to see a dark tendril surge from the lake, wrapping around Marrow's torso. The man screamed again, flailing, but the black water held him fast. Boone and Silas rushed forward, dragging him clear, but his face was pale, lips blue, eyes wide with fear. "You said it was just silver," Marrow gasped. It's alive." Silas swallowed hard, looking at the water. "I told you. Every coin is a lure, every shadow a trap. That lake, it wants us to take it." And then, he didn't finish the thought. Boone understood perfectly. By nightfall, the mist had thickened into a near-solid fog. The black lake glimmered faintly, shimmering with silver and gold beneath the surface. Every ripple suggested movement. Every whisper promised temptation and threat. The chest sat in the middle of the cove, partially unearthed, as if daring them to claim it fully. Boone's hands shook as he reached toward the coins. He felt the pulse of the lake through the ground, through the air, even through his chest. Every instinct screamed to stop, yet the lure was intoxicating. Gold and silver glimmered with unnatural brilliance, calling to their deepest desires. Krantz's voice broke through the fog. "One more push. We take it now and leave. Together." The men lunged, dragging the chest further from the shore. The lake responded instantly. Shadows writhed, tendrils lashed, and whispers rose into a crescendo that seemed to vibrate inside their skulls. Boone felt visions of drowned men, skeletal hands, and eyes without faces, all reaching for him. Every step was agony, every breath a battle against rising terror. At last the chest was fully revealed. Coins spilled over the mud, glinting in the dim light. Trinkets and relics older than memory lay scattered, each seeming to hum, to thrum with power. Boone's breath caught. He realized fully. This treasure was not just gold or silver. It was alive, cursed, and it demanded more than wealth. It demanded souls. Marrow looked at Boone, trembling. We shouldn't touch it. It's hungry." Boone nodded silently. He could feel the malevolence emanating from the chest, the lake itself, the very air around them. Every instinct screamed, "Leave now." But the treasure glittered, hypnotic, calling their names, promising what no man could resist. And the whispers, soft and eternal, promised, "Take, or we take you." Chapter 5. First Blood. The night had fallen thick and oppressive, the mist curling low across the cove like living smoke. Boone's boots sank into the slick, mud-laden shore as he strained to steady the chest, its weight far greater than he expected. The silver coins and golden trinkets clinked faintly with each movement, a metallic whisper that seemed to echo unnaturally in the still night. Around him, the others' breathing came in ragged gasps, loud against the strange silence, and each exhalation carried a nervous tremor, that Boone could feel in his own chest. The lake was no longer simply water. It pulsed with life, black waves swelling slightly, even when there was no wind. Shadows twisted beneath the surface, fleeting humanoid shapes that appeared and vanished in moments, and every ripple seemed deliberate, as though testing their courage, judging their intentions. Boone swallowed hard, feeling the weight of every eye that might be watching, real or imagined. Marrow stumbled, cursing under his breath, and the lake answered immediately. Dark tendrils shot from beneath the water, snaking across the mud, wrapping around his ankle, yanking him down with terrifying force. He screamed, a raw, guttural sound flailing violently. Boone lunged to grab him, Silas behind him, and together they hauled the man free. But the tendrils lingered at the edge of the water, like patient predators, waiting for another mistake. Krantz barked orders, but his voice carried the edge of fear. "Keep moving. Don't let it intimidate you. We've come too far to stop now." Yet even he flinched as a shadow briefly rose above the water, humanoid but wrong, its eyes hollow and gleaming faintly red, staring directly at them before vanishing back beneath the lake's surface. Hours passed. Every movement became a battle against fatigue, fear, and the sticky mud of the cove. The chest, though partially unearthed, refused to give its weight easily. Boone's hands ached from pulling, sweat mixing with mud on his palms. Yet he could not stop. The silver and gold seemed to hum, alive with a promise of power and wealth beyond imagining. And he knew, deep down, that hesitation could be just as deadly as recklessness. Marrow whimpered, his face pale and lips blue. I can't do this. That thing in the water, it wants us." Boone shot a glance at him. "Then we move together. One step at a time. Don't let it see fear in your eyes." He realized with a cold certainty that the lake did more than swallow men physically. It fed on their terror, amplifying it, twisting it, making the smallest doubt a weapon against them. Suddenly the mist thickened violently, obscuring the lake entirely. The whispers became louder, more insistent, curling around their minds like smoke, voices teasing, mocking. "Take it, or we take you." Boone felt the words vibrate in his chest, in his skull, rattling his sanity. He could see Marrow clutching his head, muttering incomprehensible words in fear, and Krantz's hand trembled as he pressed on the chest, refusing to admit his own terror. The lake reacted as if alive, pulses of black water rising like waves of shadow, striking the shore in arcs that threatened to pull them all in. Boone grabbed the nearest rope and tied it to the chest, trying to keep it steady. But every tug sent ripples of darkness toward them. The chest shuddered under its own weight, and Boone could swear it trembled with anticipation, as if eager to be taken, eager to consume them further. Hours stretched, the night unending. Each man felt their grip on reality weaken. Boone's mind conjured fleeting images of drowned men from past decades, faces pressed against the black surface, skeletal hands reaching out from beneath. Shadows seemed to leap and coil, forming grotesque humanoid shapes that vanished when he tried to focus on them. He realized with growing horror, the lake not only tested their bodies, it toyed with their minds. Marrow's scream broke the tense rhythm as a tendril struck him across the chest, throwing him into the mud. Boone leapt to drag him clear, feeling the cold pulse of the lake through the ground, as though the water itself extended its will into the soil. Silas's knife gleamed faintly in the mist, slicing through a rising shadow that had attempted to latch onto Marrow's shoulder. The men finally managed to drag the chest further from the shore, partially onto firmer ground. Yet the lake did not relent. Ripples spread unnaturally fast across the black surface, and the whispers rose, curling inside their ears and minds, promising power and immortality in exchange for just one step closer. one coin touched. Boone felt his knees weaken under the pull of the chest, under the seductive gleam of silver and gold, and realized that to hesitate might be just as fatal as to grasp greedily. The mist grew denser, wrapping around their faces like a living veil. Boone looked into the cove, seeing what he first thought were floating branches, then realized with a chill that they were hands, skeletal and wet, writhing just beneath the surface, reaching upward in silent demand. He tore his eyes away, forcing himself to focus on the task at hand. Krantz gritted his teeth, muscles straining, eyes wild with desperation and greed. "Keep it moving. One more push and we're done." Boone nodded silently, his own fear suppressed beneath a surge of resolve. He could feel the lake pressing in on every side, whispering, threatening, promising, punishing. Yet each man knew they had come too far, carried too much hope and greed to retreat now. At last, as the first hints of moonlight reflected off the obsidian surface, the chest lay fully exposed on solid ground. Coins gleamed, trinkets shimmered faintly, and every piece seemed to hum with a dark vitality. Boone realized with a cold, sinking certainty. This treasure was not merely silver and gold. It was alive, cursed, and demanded more than wealth. It demanded fear, it demanded souls, and it would take all who dared disturb it. Marrow sank to his knees, trembling violently. We shouldn't touch it. It's alive." Boone's hands hovered over the chest. He felt the pulse of the lake, felt it in his bones, his mind, his very chest. The whispers whispered to him directly now. "Take, or we take you." He knew then that the first blood had been shed, and the lake had only begun its feast. Chapter 6. The Curse Revealed. The first blood had stained the mud, and the night air hung heavy with the coppery scent. Boone wiped sweat and dirt from his brow, glancing at the chest of treasure, half buried and glinting faintly under the pale moonlight. The coins shimmered almost unnaturally, as if alive, and every ripple of the lake echoed a sinister pulse, vibrating through the ground and into his bones. The whispers were constant now, curling into his ears, speaking promises of wealth, power, and immortality, or threats of death should he hesitate. Krantz crouched beside him, pale, jaw tight, and eyes darting over the black water. His hands were slick with mud, shaking from adrenaline and fear. "Do you feel it?" he whispered harshly. "The chest, the lake, it's alive. I've never seen anything like it." Boone nodded grimly. "I know. It's not just the water. It's this treasure. Every coin, every trinket. It hums. I can feel it in my chest. It's hungry." Silas Crow stepped back to the water's edge, knife ready, eyes narrowed. He had been quiet since Marrow's near death, but now his voice cut sharply through the tense night. "It's a curse, that's what it is. Every man who touches this chest is marked. The lake doesn't forgive mistakes, it punishes them." Krantz gritted his teeth, but Boone noticed a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Punishes? How? We've already survived the first attack. Surely it can't—" His words died as a shadow rose from the black surface, humanoid but grotesque, faceless, writhing in the mist. Tendrils of water lashed out at him and Boone simultaneously, forcing them to stagger back, their boots sinking into the sucking mud. Boone's pulse raced as he realized the terrifying truth. The lake was not simply water. It was sentient, intelligent, malevolent. Every ripple, every shadow, every whisper was deliberate, a test, a lure. He could feel the pull on his mind, teasing him, whispering desires he had never voiced aloud. "Take it. All of it. You deserve it." The voice was velvet and steel at once, coaxing and threatening. Marrow, still trembling, glanced at the chest with wide eyes. It's alive. I can feel it in the air. Every coin, every shadow, it's calling me. Boone clenched his fists. It doesn't matter if it calls. It's a trap. The moment we touch it fully, it will claim one of us. We have to be careful. Hours passed. The mist thickened, curling like smoke, reducing visibility to a few feet. Shadows writhed across the cove, appearing briefly as drowned men or spectral figures, only to vanish into nothingness. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, twisting each man's thoughts. Boone felt the tug of his own greed, the desire to claim the treasure, to pocket the silver and gold, and escape the lake with his life. And yet, the terror restrained him, sharp as a blade in his chest. Suddenly, a violent ripple surged across the lake, and a tendril lashed out, striking Krantz across the shoulder. He yelped and stumbled back into the mud, slapping at the dark appendage that clung like a serpent. Boone grabbed his arm, pulling him upright, but the lake's hunger was relentless. It pulsed beneath them, black waves rolling forward without wind, shadows writhing just beneath the surface, eyes glowing faintly red, as if mocking their fear. Boone realized fully that the curse was not just physical, it was psychological. Every man's fear was amplified, mirrored, twisted, feeding the lake's will. The whispers began to suggest betrayal, stirring suspicion among them. He wants it all for himself. Take him first. The words were subtle, almost imperceptible, yet Boone could feel the seeds of distrust germinating among the others. Silas spoke then, low and dangerous. We can't last long here, not if the lake keeps feeding on our fear. We need to decide. Take enough treasure to satisfy our greed, or leave what we've got and survive. Every second we linger, it grows stronger. Boone's gaze fell on the chest. The coins gleamed under the mist, seemingly alive. Trinkets older than memory glimmered faintly, humming with energy. Each piece whispered promises in his mind: wealth, power, immortality, or death. The temptation was unbearable, yet he understood instinctively that to take too much would be to invite the curse fully into their lives. Krantz muttered, shaking. We can't just leave it here. After all this work. The lake responded immediately, pulsing violently. Tendrils rose from the water, striking the mud around them with precision, sending splashes and arcs that narrowly missed Boone and Krantz. The shadows beneath the water moved with increasing complexity, coiling around the chest as if defending it. Boone's stomach turned. The lake would not allow them to leave without paying a price. Night deepened, the mist thick and suffocating. The whispers had grown into a cacophony, pressing against their ears and thoughts. Boone could hear them in his chest, in his bones, in every heartbeat. Take, or be taken. He glanced at Marrow, pale and trembling. We can't all survive if we touch it fully, he said. We need to agree, divide carefully, or leave most of it behind. Krantz shook his head, greed eclipsing fear for the first time that Boone noticed. I'm taking what I can. Whoever wants it, help me, or step aside. The tension snapped like a wire. Silas stepped between them, eyes blazing. No, if one of us takes too much, the lake will claim us all. We move together, or not at all. Boone realized that the real curse was not just in the lake. It was in their greed, in their fear, in their inability to resist temptation. The treasure amplified everything, feeding the lake as surely as it lured them closer to death. He shivered, realizing that the curse was eternal, patient, waiting for every man who thought he could outsmart it. The chest pulsed faintly in the moonlight, and Boone felt it thrum against his hands, alive with a malevolent intelligence. He took a deep breath, preparing for the next move. knowing that whatever came next would decide whether they would survive the night or be claimed by the cursed waters of Silver Lake. Chapter 7. Descent into Madness. The night had stretched into an endless gray, the mist thick and suffocating, curling around the men like fingers of a spectral hand. Boone's boots sank into the mud with every step, the chest of treasure straining at his arms and shoulders. Every ripple on the black lake, every shadow flickering at the edge of vision, made him flinch. The whispers had grown constant, threading into every thought, shaping memories and fears into vivid, unbearable visions. He felt them in his chest, in the hollow of his skull, a vibration that pulsed with his heartbeat. Take it all, or be taken. The words promised unimaginable wealth and power, but threatened oblivion at the same time. Boone's hands shook, fingers brushing the silver coins, feeling a cold energy ripple through him, beckoning and threatening all at once. Marrow stumbled beside him, pale and trembling, muttering incoherently. It's calling. I hear them. The voices. It wants us." He flinched as the mist thickened, and a shadow coiled at the water's edge, stretching upward, human in form, but grotesque in motion. Boone saw its face for a fleeting instant, hollow, mouth open in a silent scream, eyes dark voids that seemed to pierce into his mind, and then it vanished. Krantz was shaking now, jaw tight, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. "We can't leave it. We can't just go," he muttered, his voice trembling between greed and fear. "We've risked too much. The gold, the silver." Boone noticed for the first time the faint gleam in his eyes, the same seductive hunger that Boone felt gnawing at his own mind. Silas Crow, usually the calmest among them, had gone silent, knife held tight in one hand. He watched the lake like a predator, eyes scanning every ripple and shadow. It's not just water anymore," he said finally. "It's a mind. It watches. It knows what we want, what we fear, and it uses that against us." Boone nodded slowly. "I know. The first blood has only made it stronger. Every man it claims, every ounce of fear it consumes, it grows hungrier." The whispers grew louder, threading through his mind, warping perception. He could see past shadows twist into faces of drowned men, reaching, clawing, screaming. Some appeared familiar, as if the lake dredged memories from the deepest, darkest corners of his own mind. The chest grew heavier, almost resisting their combined strength, as if alive, aware. Every coin shimmered faintly in the moonlight, each relic humming with a malevolent energy. Boone realized fully that the treasure itself was an extension of the lake's will. To touch it fully was to risk being claimed entirely. Yet to hesitate was also dangerous. The lake punished indecision, feeding on the fear that hesitation produced. Marrow whimpered again, clutching his head. It's showing me visions, things I've done, things I wanted, things I regret." He screamed as shadows swirled around him, and Boone lunged to steady him, feeling the pull of the lake's hunger in every step, in every pulse of the mud beneath their feet. The whispers were now distinct, almost tangible. "Betray, take, or be taken." Boone's mind wavered, seeing each man's thoughts reflected in the rippling water, twisted desires, fears, and grudges magnified. He realized with horror that the lake could manipulate not just their environment, but their minds. Every fear, every impulse toward greed became a weapon the lake used against them. Suddenly, a tendril of black water surged, striking the chest with terrifying force. The men staggered, boots slipping in the mud. The lake seemed to pulse in rhythm with their own fear, responding to their panic, feeding on every heartbeat. Boone could see shadows rising beneath the surface, skeletal figures reaching upward, grasping for the coins, grasping for them. Krantz yelled, a mix of anger and terror. "We keep going! We can't give in! We've come too far!" Yet even he flinched as one shadow coiled around the chest, rising briefly above the mud, human-like but distorted, and then fell back into the black water. The whispers intensified, threading through Boone's mind. "Take it all, or you are ours." Silas moved silently, circling the chest, knife poised. "We can't all survive if the chest is touched fully," he said. "The lake tests us. We must be careful. Decide who takes what, or leave most of it behind." Boone's heart pounded. The temptation was unbearable. The coins shimmered in the mist, each reflecting his deepest desires, promises of wealth, freedom, and power. And yet every instinct screamed danger. To take even one handful risked death. To leave it risked madness from longing. The whispers were patient, insistent, eternal. "You will come back. You cannot resist. You will belong." Hours dragged on. The mist thickened, making sight nearly impossible. Shadows became more active, coiling, rising briefly, vanishing. Boone felt his grip on reality weakening, the chest growing heavier, the voices pressing into his thoughts. Each man around him showed signs of strain, fear, panic, suspicion. The lake's curse was no longer subtle. It was inescapable. It had already begun to warp them, driving each to madness in different ways. Marrow suddenly screamed, pointing to the water. Boone turned just in time to see a shape rise fully, pale and twisted, a drowned figure with hollow eyes reaching toward the chest. He could feel the pull of its hunger, the weight of its gaze. The men struggled, pulling the chest backward, but the lake's will pressed on, black water spreading like a living tide, encroaching from all sides. By the time dawn hinted at the horizon, Boone understood the terrible truth. The lake did not merely punish greed, it amplified it. Every desire, every fear, every shadow of betrayal was magnified, becoming a weapon against them. The curse was absolute, patient, eternal. Survival depended not only on strength or courage, but on the ability to resist the lake's call, and that would not last long. Boone's hands hovered over the chest. The coins hummed faintly, vibrating with the cursed energy of the lake, whispering promises he could not fully resist. Shadows shifted beneath the surface, eyes glowing faintly red in the dim light. He realized, with a chill that ran down his spine, that every step from here on would be a battle against the lake, against their own minds, and against the inevitable descent into madness. The curse was no longer just a story. It was reality. Chapter 8. Echoes of Betrayal. The gray dawn had barely touched the cove when Boone finally allowed himself a shaky breath. The mist was thinner now, but the air remained heavy, as if the lake itself exhaled a cold, unyielding warning. The treasure lay before them, gleaming with unnatural light, each coin and trinket humming faintly with a malevolent life. Boone's hands hovered over it, trembling. Every instinct screamed both desire and terror. Krantz had moved closer, eyes glittering with greed. Boone noticed a subtle change, the first crack of betrayal forming in his expression, the faint narrowing of his eyes when he thought no one was watching. The lake's whispers, soft but insistent, seemed to seep into the men's very thoughts, turning suspicion into a weapon. "He wants it all. Take him first." Boone shivered. He could hear the suggestion in his mind, insidious, feeding the fear he tried to suppress. Marrow remained pale and trembling, clutching his stomach as though the lake's touch had left a lingering chill inside him. It's speaking to me," he whispered. "Not just the whispers. It's showing things about us." Silas, ever cautious, glanced around at the shifting shadows, his knife gleaming faintly. "It's testing us now." The first blood made it hungry. The whispers, the visions. It's looking for cracks, weakness, betrayal, fear. We need to move carefully. Boone's gaze fell to the chest. Each coin seemed alive, tiny pulses of energy vibrating beneath his fingers, and shadows beneath the lake moved in tandem, coiling, waiting. He could feel the lake's patience, its slow, deliberate hunger. It wanted them to fight, to panic, to turn on each other, and the treasure amplified every impulse. Suddenly, Marrow gasped and pointed toward Krantz. Boone turned in time to see a faint movement in the mist, Krantz's hand hovering over a handful of coins. The lake pulsed violently, sending ripples across the cove. Boone felt the pressure in his chest rise, the whispers tightening around his mind. "Take it all, or be claimed." Boone lunged, grabbing Marrow and yanking him away. "Don't touch it! The lake, don't you see? It will kill us if we give in to greed." But Krantz ignored the warning, eyes fixed on the treasure. The lake responded immediately. Dark tendrils surged from the water, striking the shore and splashing the men. Boone staggered, mud sucking at his boots, and felt the first, real taste of fear clawing at his mind. The shadows in the water were no longer simple shapes. They twisted, coiled, and formed grotesque humanoid figures, faces frozen in silent screams, hands reaching toward the chest and the men alike. Boone's stomach churned, and he realized with absolute clarity. The lake fed not just on fear, but on the desire for the treasure, the jealousy, the doubt, the very human flaws it could exploit. Marrow whimpered beside him. It's showing us, each other, our worst selves. I don't know who to trust." Boone's eyes met Silas's. The man's jaw was tight, eyes narrow, and for the first time Boone saw doubt there too. Each man's mind was being tested, manipulated, and twisted. The lake's curse was patient, waiting for them to make a single mistake, and it would claim them without hesitation. Hours passed. The chest seemed to pulse in rhythm with their fears. Boone noticed the coins glinting as if mocking them, shadows coiling beneath the lake's surface, rising and falling with the tide of the whispers. Every time someone reached for a coin, a tendril would lash from the water, striking with precision, causing terror to erupt anew. Krantz finally made his move, reaching for a handful of silver. The lake responded instantly. A tendril shot out, whipping around his wrist, pulling him down toward the black water. Marrow screamed, but Boone lunged, grabbing Krantz just in time. The shadow recoiled, vanishing beneath the surface, leaving the chest vibrating softly in the mud. Silas stepped forward, knife at the ready. "We can't last long if we keep this up. The lake will claim one of us soon. We need to decide, divide carefully, or leave most of it behind." Boone's mind reeled. He could feel the pull of the silver, the hypnotic gleam of gold, the promises of power. And yet he knew instinctively that to take too much would invite death. The lake's whispers were patient but relentless, threading into every thought, every memory, every secret desire. "Take, or we take you." Suddenly Marrow gasped and pointed at the lake. Boone turned just in time to see a shadow rise fully, a grotesque figure, pale, skeletal, its eyes glowing faintly red. It reached for the chest, coiling around the coins as if claiming them for itself. The men recoiled, but the shadow did not strike. Instead, it hovered, observing, patient, intelligent, hungry. Boone understood the horror fully. The lake was not just a lake. It was alive, sentient, and malevolent. It could manipulate the men's thoughts, their desires, their fears, and it would do so until it claimed every soul who dared disturb the cursed treasure. Night fell again, and the whispers grew louder. Each man felt their grip on reality slipping, shadows shifting around them, illusions and truths blending. Boone realized the terrible inevitability. Greed and fear would eventually destroy them if they did not resist. But the chest lay before them, pulsing, alive, tempting, whispering, "Take, or we take you." By the faint light of the rising moon, Boone knew the next move would define their fate. The lake waited, patient and eternal, shadows coiling beneath the black water, the curse ready to consume whoever faltered first. And Boone understood, with a cold certainty, the true horror of Silver Lake was not the treasure itself, but what it revealed in the hearts of men. The descent into madness had begun. Chapter 9. The First Survivor. The mist had thickened to a nearly tangible wall by midnight. Boone struggled to see more than a few feet ahead, the chest of treasure grunting under their combined weight. The lake was restless, black tendrils rising and recoiling as if testing the men, probing their fear. The whispers had grown relentless, wrapping around their minds, echoing their deepest desires and their darkest fears. "Take it all, or we take you." Marrow's knees buckled in the mud. His eyes darted toward the shadows beneath the black water, glowing faintly red, and he shivered violently. I can't do this anymore," he whispered, voice trembling. It's alive. It's punishing us. "We're doomed," Krantz snarled at him. "We're not leaving yet. We've come too far for cowardice." He lunged toward the chest, greed and desperation flashing in his eyes. Boone caught the movement and grabbed Krantz's arm just in time. The lake pulsed violently, a wave of black water surging forward as though it had teeth. Krantz yelped, stumbling back, mud splashing, and the shadows beneath the surface writhed and rose, reaching, curling like serpents. Silas stepped cautiously between them, knife ready, eyes darting to every movement. The lake is patient. It waits for a mistake. And greed is a mistake. Boone's heart raced. He realized that their survival would depend not only on skill and courage, but on resisting the lake's manipulations. Every shadow, every ripple, every whisper sought to pit them against each other, to feed the curse. Suddenly, the lake surged violently. A tendril shot up, wrapping around Krantz's torso, yanking him toward the water. His scream echoed off the misty trees, raw and terrified. Boone lunged, grabbing Krantz by the collar, but the black appendage recoiled just enough to drag him a few steps closer to the water's edge. The other shadows rose simultaneously, dozens of pale skeletal figures reaching from beneath the obsidian surface, their mouths open in silent, mocking screams. Boone realized with horror that the lake had decided. One would be claimed immediately for daring to reach too greedily. He tugged with all his strength, and Marrow, seizing the moment, joined him, pulling Krantz free. The shadow retreated, vanishing beneath the surface, but Boone knew the reprieve was temporary. The chest pulsed again, almost eagerly, beckoning them. Boone felt its cold energy in his hands, in his chest, in his mind. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, twisting their thoughts, whispering that only one man could survive with the treasure. The lake wanted not just to punish, but to create conflict, to feed on their desire for wealth and power. Hours dragged on. The mist thickened, the shadows beneath the water became more active, and Boone could see visions of the others' deaths flickering in the ripples. Marrow dragged beneath the black water, Silas surrounded by skeletal hands, Krantz's body pulled into darkness. The lake showed them what awaited any who faltered. Marrow whimpered beside Boone, shaking violently. I can't. It's coming for us all." Boone's mind raced. He knew that the only way to survive was to remain calm, to resist the lake's manipulations, to keep the men from turning on each other. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet he felt the magnetic pull of the chest, the coins, the trinkets glowing with their cursed life. The temptation was unbearable. Suddenly, Krantz lunged for a handful of silver, ignoring the warnings and the subtle murmurs of reason. The lake reacted instantly. Tendrils shot from the water, wrapping around his arms and chest, yanking him violently toward the obsidian depths. He screamed, thrashing, mud flying, eyes wide in terror. Boone and Silas lunged to pull him free, but it was too late. Krantz's body vanished beneath the black water, leaving only ripples and whispers in his wake. Marrow sobbed, falling to his knees. Boone's heart thudded in his chest. One down, but the lake's hunger had not been satisfied. It had only begun. Hours later, the men, now only Boone, Silas, and Marrow, sat huddled near the chest, exhausted, trembling, mud-caked, eyes wide with terror. The whispers had become a constant hum in their heads, a pressure that refused to release. Boone realized that the curse was not merely in the lake, but in the chest itself. Each coin, each trinket, pulsed with a life that fed on fear, greed, and desire. Silas finally spoke, voice hoarse. "We can't all survive. The lake, it wants only one to leave with the treasure, or perhaps none at all." Boone looked at him, then at Marrow. Marrow was pale, trembling, on the verge of collapse. Boone felt a grim clarity settle in his mind. He was the strongest, the most focused. If anyone had a chance to survive this nightmare, it was him, but he could not abandon the others. Not yet. The night dragged on. Shadows danced beneath the water, ripples licked the mud, and the whispers grew louder, threading into every thought. Boone forced himself to stay calm, focusing on the rhythm of his breath, resisting the pull of the silver, resisting the urge to let fear control him. By dawn, it was clear. Krantz was gone, claimed by the lake for his greed. Marrow was close to breaking, his mind fraying under the whispers. Boone felt a grim resolve harden inside him. Survival would require cunning, courage, and patience. He would endure the lake's tests, resist the whispers, and perhaps, alone, he would leave the cursed waters with his life. The chest gleamed faintly in the morning light, untouched, waiting. Boone realized that the lake's hunger was far from satisfied, and he understood fully that only one among them would survive the cursed Silver Lake. Boone's eyes met Marrow's. "We need to keep moving," he said quietly, voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "We follow the lake's edge. We don't fight it. We survive." The mist swirled around them, thick and suffocating, and the lake pulsed ominously. Boone felt it watching, feeling his every thought, testing his resolve. One man would survive, and he intended that man to be him. Chapter 10. The Lake's Grip. The sun had barely pierced the dense morning mist when Boone realized the full measure of their situation. Only he, Silas, and a trembling Marrow remained, the others claimed by the cursed lake, their screams still echoing faintly in his memory. The chest of treasure sat before them, half buried in the mud, gleaming with unnatural brilliance. Every coin, every trinket seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, vibrating in the misted air as if alive, as if aware of their hesitation. Boone's chest heaved, and his mind wrestled with both terror and temptation. The whispers were constant now, threading into his very thoughts, twisting memories, desires, and fears into sharp, insistent pressure. Take it, all, or be taken. The temptation was unbearable, but Boone understood the first truth of survival here. The lake rewarded patience as much as it punished greed. Marrow whimpered behind him, his body shaking violently, eyes wide as he stared at the water. I can't. It's watching. It knows everything. Silas stepped closer, knife in hand, eyes scanning the rippling surface. It's testing us. Every glance at the chest, every heartbeat, every thought of taking more, it senses it. One wrong move, and we're gone. Boone nodded grimly. He had felt the pull of the treasure as strongly as anyone, the silver and gold calling to him, promising unimaginable wealth, power, and freedom. But he also understood the true danger. The lake wanted to claim them entirely, one by one, feeding on greed, fear, and weakness. The mist shifted and thickened, curling around them, and the lake pulsed like a living heart. Shadows beneath the water rose and fell, grotesque, distorted forms glimpsed only for a moment before vanishing. Boone shivered, realizing the lake was more than a body of water. It was sentient, malevolent, and infinitely patient. It waited for any misstep, any sign of weakness. Marrow stumbled, falling to his knees, clutching the mud. I can't resist it. I hear them, the voices. His words were torn away as the lake surged violently. Black tendrils shot from the water, striking the mud with frightening speed and accuracy. Boone lunged to pull Marrow back, feeling the cold pulse of the lake reverberate through the soil, as if the water itself were alive. Silas shouted, "Get back! Don't let it touch you!" But even his own hands shook, knife trembling as shadows writhed in the mist. The lake had grown more active, more aggressive as the hours dragged on. It pulsed with the memory of those it had claimed, and Boone could feel their stolen energy feeding the water, the shadows, the very mist itself. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional splash of water or the whispering voices curling into Boone's mind. He realized that survival required more than strength. It required cunning, patience, and a careful calculation of each step. The lake wanted them to panic, to fight among themselves, to allow greed to overrule reason. Only one could leave, and the curse would see to it that the lake claimed all others. Boone's eyes drifted to the chest. The silver and gold shimmered in the mist, calling, beckoning. He could see visions of power, wealth, and influence flashing across his mind, almost tangible. Yet, intertwined with them, were visions of death. Skeletal hands pulling Marrow and Silas beneath the water, their screams muted by the darkness. Boone clenched his fists. To survive, he would have to resist the chest's lure, even as it pulsed with unholy energy beneath his fingers. Suddenly Marrow screamed, eyes wide in terror. A tendril shot from the water, lashing at his legs, pulling him down into the mud. Boone lunged, dragging him free, mud and water splashing, tendrils recoiling. Silas moved to help, but a shadow surged from the lake, wrapping around his ankle. Boone's pulse raced as he grabbed Silas, pulling him back with every ounce of strength. The men were exhausted, trembling, and soaked in mud. The chest before them pulsed faintly in the mist, alive, sentient, calling to them, whispering in their minds. Boone realized that the lake's hunger was not limited to greed. It fed on fear, doubt, and weakness. Every thought of betrayal, every impulse toward selfishness, every hesitation was weaponized. Boone looked at Silas and Marrow. "We can't stay here. The lake, it won't let us leave without paying a price. But there's a way to survive, if we keep moving, if we resist the chest's pull, if we don't fight each other. One of us will survive, and it might as well be me." Marrow shook violently, murmuring, I can't. I won't." Boone could see the fraying edges of his mind. Silas's eyes were sharp, calculating, but exhaustion had dulled his reflexes, made him hesitant. Boone understood. The lake would test them again, and soon. The mist shifted, thickening suddenly. Tendrils rose from the water, reaching, coiling, and striking the mud in arcs, as if preparing for the final test. Boone gritted his teeth, hands tightening around the chest's handles. Every instinct screamed fear, but he pushed it down. Calm, careful, measured, that was the only path forward. By the faint glow of the rising moon, the lake pulsed ominously, shadows writhing beneath the surface. Boone understood the terrible truth. Only one would leave this cursed place alive. He did not yet know if it would be him, but his resolve was firm. Patience, cunning, and courage would be his weapons against the lake's eternal hunger. The whispers rose to a fevered pitch. Choose, survive, or be claimed. Boone swallowed hard, feeling the cold, malevolent pulse of the lake beneath his feet. One man would survive, he told himself. One would leave. And he intended that man to be him. Chapter 11, Shadows Among Us. The mist had become almost solid by nightfall, curling around the trees and encasing the men in a thick, suffocating wall. Boone's boots sank deep into the mud with each step, and the chest of treasure seemed to grow heavier, almost resisting their combined efforts to move it. Every ripple on the lake's black surface, every shadow, every whisper in the mist pressed into their minds like fingers of ice, clawing at their sanity. Boone glanced at Marrow, who was trembling violently, pale and broken. His muttering had become almost constant, fragments of phrases torn from his mind. It knows, it sees, it wants us. Boone realized fully that the lake had claimed more than just the body of the previous victims. It had begun to claim their minds as well. Fear was its sustenance, and the whispers were its instrument. Silas moved cautiously ahead, knife held tight, eyes scanning the mist as if he could see the invisible tendrils that whipped through the air and mud. "It's learning us," he said, voice low but edged with tension. "Every step, every glance at the treasure, it adapts. It knows what we fear, and it uses it." Boone nodded grimly. He could feel the lake's pulse beneath his feet, a cold, malevolent rhythm echoing in his bones. The whispers were constant now, threading through his mind, shaping thoughts he had never thought aloud. "Take it all, or be claimed. Betray your companions." Boone clenched his fists, suppressing the urges that threatened to overpower his reason. Suddenly, a tendril shot from the lake, striking Marrow across the chest. He screamed, thrashing violently, eyes wide with terror. Boone lunged, pulling him back just in time. The lake pulsed and recoiled, as if amused, testing the limits of their resolve. Shadows beneath the black water twisted, human-like but grotesque, faces frozen in silent screams, hands clawing at the air. Boone shivered as he realized the lake was orchestrating a spectacle, deliberately feeding on panic and fear. Hours passed. Each man moved like a shadow, tense, cautious, and increasingly aware that one wrong step could be fatal. The chest of treasure glimmered faintly in the dim light, alive with its cursed energy. Boone could feel it calling to him, whispering promises of power, freedom, and survival. And yet, intertwined with those promises, were visions of death. Marrow dragged beneath the black waves, Silas surrounded by skeletal hands, and himself slipping into the darkness if he faltered. The lake pulsed again, black water swirling violently, as if impatient. Boone realized with a chilling clarity that it was preparing its final test. Every instinct screamed to flee, to abandon the cursed treasure. But he knew that survival required cunning. Patience, precision, and resolve. Those were his only weapons. Marrow whimpered, voice barely audible. I can't. It's too strong. I hear them. Everywhere." Boone's mind raced. He understood that only one of them would survive. His own fear was present, gnawing, but he forced it down, focusing on strategy. He needed to anticipate the lake's movements, to resist both the treasure's call and the impulses it sought to instill. Silas's eyes narrowed. We need to move carefully. The lake isn't just attacking us physically, it's turning us against each other. We can't let it. One slip, one glance, and it takes everything. Boone's gaze returned to the chest. Its surface shimmered, alive, pulsating with dark energy. The whispers were now voices, distinct and human-like, mocking and coaxing. Greed, betrayal, you will belong to us. Boone felt the pull of temptation, a magnetic tug on his mind, stronger than anything he had ever felt. Then, the lake reacted. Tendrils of black water shot from beneath the surface, whipping around their legs and arms with terrifying precision. Boone and Silas staggered, pulling marrow clear as shadows rose from the water, grotesque humanoid forms coiling and twisting. The chest trembled, almost sentient, vibrating with the lake's hunger. Boone understood. The final trial had begun. Marrow screamed again, panic overtaking him, and lunged toward the chest. Boone moved instinctively, grabbing him by the collar. "No!" he shouted. "Do not touch it! If you give in, the lake will claim you." Silas hesitated, eyes darting between the chest and the shadows beneath the water. Boone realized that Silas, strong and determined though he was, had begun to waver. Fear was creeping in, weakening his resolve. The lake sensed it, pulsing with satisfaction, feeding on their terror. Boone knew what he had to do. He forced himself calm, breathing steadily, focusing on the rhythm of the mist, the pulse of the lake, the weight of the chest. He began to guide Marrow and Silas, step by careful step, away from the water's edge, keeping their movements synchronized, controlled, deliberate. Every slip, every hesitation was dangerous, but Boone's resolve was firm. By the faint light of a dying moon, the final tendrils recoiled slightly, shadows beneath the water, twitching as if impatient. Boone saw the lake's intelligence clearly now. It was testing, probing, waiting for the final falter. He felt the hum of the treasure beneath his hands, its dark energy urging him to grab, to take, to betray. Boone resisted. Patience, cunning, resolve. These would be his weapons. Hours later, Boone realized a grim truth. Silas and Marrow were near breaking. Their fear had grown too great, their minds fraying. Boone's focus, calm under pressure, had kept him intact. One man would survive the cursed Silver Lake. Boone understood that the lake's tests were almost complete, and the final choice would determine who would leave and who would be claimed forever. Boone's eyes met Marrow's, trembling and pale. "We move together," he said quietly. "We follow the edge, we resist the whispers, and we survive. One of us will leave this place alive, and I intend that man to be me." The lake pulsed ominously, shadows writhing beneath the obsidian water, whispers rising to a fevered crescendo. Boone felt its presence like a living weight, a test of mind, body, and spirit. Only one would survive, and the cursed Silver Lake had chosen its next prey carefully. Chapter 12. The Final Test. The cove was silent except for the faint hiss of the mist curling around the trees. Boone's boots sank into the mud with every step, each movement a battle against exhaustion, fear, and the lake's relentless pull. The chest of treasure gleamed in the dim light, alive with a pulse that seemed to match his own heartbeat. Shadows writhed beneath the surface, humanoid, grotesque, and ever watchful. Boone knew that the final test had begun. Marrow and Silas trailed behind, trembling, eyes wide with terror. Boone could feel their fear radiating in waves, feeding the lake, empowering the shadows beneath the black water. The whispers were constant, winding into their minds like cold, sharp vines. Take, betray, survive, or be claimed. Boone swallowed hard, feeling the pull of the silver and gold. Every instinct screamed to grasp it, to claim the cursed treasure and escape. But he knew the cost. One misstep, one moment of greed, and the lake would take them all. Patience, cunning, and resolve. These were the only weapons he had against the sentient hunger of the water. Suddenly, a tendril shot from the lake, lashing at Marrow. He screamed, flailing, and Boone lunged to pull him clear, mud and water splashing around them. The shadows beneath the water coiled, rising, writhing, testing their resolve. Boone realized the lake was not merely physical, it was psychic, probing their minds, amplifying their deepest fears and desires. Silas whispered, voice trembling, "It wants us to fight each other. The greed, the fear, it's twisting us. One slip, and it claims everything." Boone nodded grimly. We moved together. Carefully, every step measured. The lake can't claim what it can't manipulate. Hours passed in tense silence, the mist thickening around them, suffocating, blinding. Boone guided Marrow and Silas along the edge of the lake, careful to avoid the black tendrils lashing out unpredictably. The chest pulsed faintly in the mud, as if alive, humming with energy, whispering promises that Boone struggled to ignore. Then it happened. A shadow surged from the lake, coiling around Silas's ankle and yanking him violently toward the water. Boone reacted instinctively, grabbing Silas by the collar and pulling with all his strength. Marrow tried to help, but fear paralyzed him, and his cries of terror echoed in the mist. The shadow retreated suddenly, vanishing beneath the surface, leaving only ripples and whispers behind. Boone realized the final confrontation was near. The lake had tested them enough. Fear, greed, doubt, hesitation. Now it demanded a resolution. Only one would survive, and the shadows beneath the obsidian water were preparing for the last move. Hours stretched into night. The mist became almost tangible, coiling around their bodies, seeping into their minds. Boone could feel the whispers threading through every thought, every memory, every desire. Take it, or we take you. Betray. Survive. He forced himself to focus, forcing down the creeping panic, the magnetic pull of the treasure, the temptation to act on instinct and claim it for himself. Marrow stumbled, nearly falling into the black water. Boone grabbed him, holding him upright. "You have to stay calm," he whispered. "The lake feeds on fear. Resist it if you want to survive." Silas, pale and exhausted, met Boone's gaze. We can't all make it, you know that." Boone's heart pounded. He understood fully now. The lake would allow only one to survive. Every shadow, every tendril, every whisper was a test of will, cunning, and courage. He was the strongest among them, not in body but in mind. He would endure, and he would leave the cursed waters alive. The mist thickened, the shadows rising from the lake in grotesque forms, faceless, skeletal, hands reaching, coiling, testing. Boone could hear the whispers become distinct, almost voices of men. "One, only one. Take it. Survive." A sudden surge of black water erupted, striking Silas violently and dragging him toward the edge. Boone lunged, grabbing him, but this time the lake's pull was stronger. Shadows rose from beneath the surface, coiling around both of them, skeletal hands reaching with unnatural speed. Boone realized that the lake was forcing the decision. Survival demanded sacrifice. Marrow screamed, flailing toward the lake. Boone pushed him back, keeping him upright, and the lake shrieked, pulsing violently, sending waves of black water toward them. Boone understood. Only he had the calm, the focus, the resolve to survive this final trial. Silas faltered under the lake's pull, his grip weakening. Tendrils wrapped around him, yanking him into the water. Boone had no choice. He could try to save him or ensure his own survival. The struggle was brief but violent. Silas was claimed, screaming, by the lake, dragged beneath the black surface as Boone watched, heart hammering. The shadows closed, the mist thickened, and the whispers circled his mind. One, only one, survivor. Marrow fell to his knees, sobbing, eyes wide in terror. Boone pulled him up. "We leave now," he said firmly. "No hesitation. No looking back. Only one survives this curse, and it will be me." Step by step, Boone guided Marrow along the edge of the lake, away from the black tendrils, the pulsing chest, the shadows coiling beneath the water. The mist slowly began to thin as they reached solid ground. The lake's pulse diminished slightly, its hunger not satisfied, but temporarily sated by the sacrifices it had claimed. Boone's chest heaved with exhaustion, every muscle trembling. He glanced back at the lake, its black surface calm once more, hiding the horrors beneath. One survivor remained, and that survivor was him. The cursed treasure still pulsed faintly, its whispers echoing in his mind, but Boone knew he had endured the final test. The night passed in silence, and Boone realized the terrible truth. The lake had chosen, and it had only allowed him to leave because he had survived its tests of mind, courage, and will. The cursed Silver Lake had claimed its victims, fed on their fear, and left him alive, but forever marked by the horror he had witnessed. Chapter 13. Escape from the Cursed Lake. Dawn had begun to pierce the mist, faint pale light casting eerie reflections across the obsidian surface of Silver Lake. Boone moved cautiously along the muddy bank, chest heaving, legs trembling from exhaustion. The horrors of the night, the shadows, the whispers, the skeletal hands, had tested him to the brink, but he had survived. The lake lay calm now, deceptively serene, hiding its malevolent hunger beneath a thin veneer of silver-gray water. Marrow stumbled behind him, pale, shaking, but still alive. Boone glanced at him with a mixture of pity and resolve. "Keep moving," he said quietly. "We're not safe yet." The cursed chest of treasure gleamed faintly behind them, half buried in the mud, still alive with dark energy. Boone had resisted the overwhelming urge to claim it fully, knowing that even a single coin could allow the lake to ensnare him as it had done with the others. The whispers had not ceased. They lingered in his mind, faint and insistent, reminding him of all he had seen, all he had endured. Marrow stumbled again, this time collapsing to his knees. Boone reached for him, helping him upright, but he knew instinctively that the boy's spirit was nearly broken. The lake had fed on his fear, his panic, his weakness. Boone's own body trembled, but his mind remained sharp, focused, driven by the singular desire to survive. The mist swirled around them, thickening suddenly, as if the lake itself were aware that its prey was attempting escape. Tendrils of black water rose briefly, coiling and twisting, but did not strike. Boone realized that the lake had exhausted its fury for the moment, its hunger temporarily sated by the sacrifice of those it had claimed. They moved slowly, cautiously, along the edge of the water. Boone felt the pulse of the lake beneath his feet, a cold, malevolent rhythm echoing in his bones. Each step was measured, deliberate, avoiding the tendrils, the shadows, and the areas of the mud where the water seemed most eager to drag them back. The whispers threaded through his mind. "You survived, but you are marked. You belong." By midday, the mist had thinned, revealing the jagged landscape surrounding the lake. Boone could see the remnants of trees, warped and twisted by the lake's dark presence, the mud slick with the imprints of the fallen. Shadows still lingered in the shallow water, faint glimpses of the horrors that had claimed his companions. Boone's chest tightened, the memory of their screams echoing faintly in the wind. Marrow's voice broke the silence, shaky and faint. We made it this far, but the others." Boone shook his head, suppressing the ache in his chest. "They were claimed. We can't save them now. The lake, it does not forgive." The cursed chest remained behind, untouched, pulsing faintly. Boone understood fully. The treasure itself would remain, alive and malevolent, forever waiting for the next foolhardy souls to disturb its waters. Its hunger was endless, and the whispers would continue, patiently luring those who dared to approach Silver Lake. Boone paused at the edge of the cove, taking a deep breath. He was soaked, mud-caked, and trembling, but he had survived. Every step forward was a victory, every careful movement away from the water a triumph of will over the lake's relentless manipulation. He realized that the true curse was not merely the treasure or the lake, but what it revealed in the hearts of men: greed, fear, and the temptation to betray. Marrow stumbled beside him, eyes wide with awe and terror. Boone helped him along, and together they moved toward solid ground, the cursed lake behind them, still shimmering deceptively under the sunlight. The whispers lingered faintly, threading into their minds, but Boone forced them down, suppressing the temptation to look back. Finally, they reached the forest's edge. Boone glanced once more at the obsidian surface of Silver Lake. The water pulsed faintly, a reminder of its eternal hunger, of the lives it had claimed, and the horror it continued to harbor. One survivor remained. Boone felt the weight of that knowledge, the lingering terror, and the bitter taste of loss. He had endured, but he knew he would never be free of the lake's shadow in his mind. Marrow looked at him, pale, trembling, but alive. We survived," he whispered. Boone nodded, voice firm yet haunted. "Yes, but only because we kept our minds, our courage. The lake doesn't just take your life, it wants your soul. It wanted to break us, and we resisted. Just enough." They moved into the forest, leaving the cursed waters behind. Boone knew the chest of treasure remained, alive, waiting for the next victims. Its whispers would continue, promising wealth, power, and immortality, while hiding death and despair beneath the surface. And Boone knew, with a cold certainty, that no man could ever fully escape the shadow of Silver Lake. Marrow stumbled again, and Boone caught him. "You'll live," Boone said quietly. "We survived. That's what matters." The forest grew thicker, sunlight piercing through the canopy, and Boone felt a fragile sense of hope. One man had survived Silver Lake, but the memory of the lake, the cursed treasure, and the horrors it had unleashed would never leave him. Boone understood fully. Some treasures were meant to remain buried, and some horrors were eternal. As they walked into the distance, the obsidian waters behind them pulsed faintly one last time, a reminder that the cursed Silver Lake waited, patient and eternal, for the next soul foolish enough to seek its treasure. Boone had survived, but the cost was etched forever into his mind, a silent testament to the lake's relentless, malevolent hunger. And so, the cursed treasure remained, whispering in the shadows, waiting for the next who dared to disturb its dark domain.